we get to hear from our very own Maureen Muldoon, who will be talking to us today about being an extension of God's love. And she is a living embodiment of this. This is a woman who is not only incredibly creative and churning out all kinds of creative projects, whether they be talks on Sunday, books, plays, but she's extending her message and the love in all of these things out into the world, and also on a personal level, extending love everywhere she goes. And I have been the recipient of this love. The day that I heard my mother passed away, she was the first one at my door with food and flowers and gifts and love. And these are the things that leave a lasting impression in one's heart, to know that this is a world where love is flowing. And so we're gifted today to hear her talk about this, because we're hearing from a real expert. With that, give you our very own Maureen Muldoon.
Thanks, Bella. Gosh, that's so kind and generous. You catch me on my good days a lot. That's what I'll say about that. So I am excited about talking about being a fearless extension of God's love. And I am excited about continuing the Tapestry series. And today we have an amazing teacher who embodies this, Clive Williams. And he comes to us from England, but he resides in Ireland. And he's going to share with us some practices. So the extension of love, this is the idea. And because the idea of being an extension of God's love, of being a channel, means to surrender, really, that's the basic idea, is to surrender. When you surrender, you recognize that the good is always flowing. It's always flowing through you. Because that was the topic today, I'm not surprised that the Holy Spirit, said to Regina, hey, you're going to read this prayer for meditation. And I'm also not surprised that in our earlier calls, that Liliana brought up this incredible story that you've probably heard before. But it was like the perfect example of what it looks like to be an extension of God's love. And that's the story of Charlotte's Web. And Charlotte's Web, if you're not familiar with it, is this story about this pig who's born as a runt, and he is in jeopardy of going to the slaughterhouse. But he has this friend, this good friend, who happens to be good with the words, which we love that about Charlotte. And she is this generous, and she moves into service. Service that is not contingent on something that she's going to get out of it. And because she just moves into this being a fearless extension of love, she changes the trajectory of Wilbur's life. And it's just really a beautiful example of how that we're here not just to be extensions of God's love, but also a reminder that no matter how mighty or miniature you are, that you too are capable of moving forward greatness and great things. So to be an extension of love, we must, as I said, attempt to empty ourselves so that we can be filled with the indefinable grace. And the concept of grace can feel very ephemeral, so there's many people who have written about grace and what it is and what it looks like and what it feels like. But I love that Leonard Cohen, when asked about grace, he said that grace is this kind of balance in which you ride. It's a balance that you ride the chaos that you find around you. And so it's like almost that this grace lifts us up, like the cardinal that Seamus was talking about, that we learn how to fly over the chaos of our lives. Leonard goes on to say that it's not a matter of resolving the chaos. That's not our job. And he says there's something very arrogant and warlike in attempting to put things or the world into order. Interesting, right? Like it's almost like he's saying to us that the world will be in chaos. And can we move into the grace of just being with the chaos? So grace does not order. She aligns, she allows, she accepts what is. I've shared in the morning calls about this book that I've been reading called The Sword versus the Chalice. And the sword, the take on this book is that it talks about ancient cultures. And its idea is that the sword takes life and that the chalice gives life. And we get to decide as fearless extensions of love, whether or not our actions, our deeds, and our words are life-giving. So Charlotte's words, actions, and deeds were very life-giving. And at the time that she extended herself, she did it without self-preservation. She simply extended love. And if you want to chime in on that concept for you, maybe put in the chat, what you find to be life-giving. Where are the people, places, and things that extend without agenda? Where do you feel someone or something has extended or improved the quality of your life? It might be a book, it might be a program, it might be a person. Now, remember, like Leonard Cohen said, there might still be chaos in your life, but we get to use these wings to help to lift us over those. And how do we do it? Like, how do we actually allow ourselves to be fearless extensions of God's love, even in the chaos of our world? We do it with class. And of course, that is an acronym, CLASS, conscious love and sacred service. And so I know that a lot of us here are very much about the conscious love, and that can feel like, yeah, I want to know more about conscious love because I really do want to be a channel of love. But I don't necessarily always hear that gumption and vigor around sacred service. Usually it's like, sacred service, like, what does that mean? What's going to happen? Like, what will I have it to give? Like, do I have to move into sacred service? Could I just bypass this and sneak out of this in some way? So I invite you to look at that, because beware of the relationships in which you tell yourself that you do not have it to give. Beware of the relationships in which you tell yourself that you do not have it to give, because Jesus himself is waiting in the manger, hiding beneath your misgivings and waiting to be reborn in your actions. That's where Christ is embodied. When you think you don't have it to give, and then you remember that you are a fearless extension of God's love, that's extending love. That's what you're here for. So you have it to give. You definitely have it to give. You are an extension, and it's done unto you as you believe. So if you tell yourself you're limited, you will live by the confines of your own limitations. And then you won't be an extension. You'll be a regurgitation, just running around chasing your own tail. This is a world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen here. It's a world of sometimes seeming chaos. But in that quote, Buchner says, be not afraid. And when the angel came to the Blessed Mother, that's the same thing that the angel Gabriel said to the Blessed Mother, be not afraid. We're inviting you to be an extension of love in a world that's both rippling with wonder and raging with war. You get to be an extension, either swept up and pulled under, by that rage of war, or aligned in an acceptance and an allowing of that ripple of wonder. We get to watch that passionate parade pass by, and we get to decide, is this thing worth getting hung up on and pulled down by? Because the river intelligence within us, the channel intelligence within us, knows this too shall pass. Like, easy come, easy go. And although it might seem like the river is complacent, and to think like that is complacent, it's actually a point of great empowerment. In the place of not having an opinion, of not having a judgment, of not having a fear of fixing, is that empty place where grace can come in. And in grace, we're free of being snagged and dragged by some external stimuli. And instead, we become unowned, unharnessed, and solvent. And this is really important, because I don't think we always equate our freedom with being solvent. We're not being pulled or tossed or entranced by a situation, but freed. So entranced. I have been entranced in many situations in my life when I was under the trance of alcoholism, of consumerism, owned by concepts, owned by trying to keep up with the Joneses. And we are all entranced in some ways. So, it's okay to look at that. It's okay to look at where we have gone asleep. If we were to take an assessment of ourselves, we could see we chase what is not for us, and then we hide from what is for us. And that's what happens with the entrancement. So I would also invite you, if you haven't contemplated it, contemplate those things that you go to sleep under, those things that that you feel like you're entranced by, and maybe put them up in the chat as well. These are places that are not life-giving. They require a sincere payment for being asleep. And there may be situations that arrive on your shores that might tempt you to go to sleep, situations that rock your foundation. You might find these things knocking at your door, and you might think to yourself, this is not for me. And I know right now in the community, as we started off with these prayer intentions for other people in the community, there's a lot of people in the community right now who are having things knock at their door where they want to go, this is not for me. I don't want to allow, and accept this. I want to fight this. I want to be in defense of this. I did get a lot of calls this week, actually, for prayer requests, more than I think I've ever had. And I didn't get to all of them, so I apologize. But know that you're constantly being prayed for here. So I know that a lot comes up around holidays for people, and these invitations and these issues will arise that will leave us all feeling kind of stymied and lost and wanting things to be different. But wanting is the opposite of solvent. Solvent means having assets in excess. That's just a fun thing to say, having assets in excess. Meaning that it flows from you. You have more to give and more to give. You're free of debt. Where wanting means the opposite. It means lacking in a certain required or necessary quality. So what does the application of this look like, whether you're solvent or in wanting? The application is that when you see a person struggling, or you see yourself struggling, you either offer them the knowledge of wonder or the poison of wanting. One sounds like, I wonder how you're going to rise to this, or I wonder how I'm going to rise to this, or I worry that you're not going to rise from this, and I worry I don't have this to give. And we tend sometimes in our society to romance extraction rather than extension, where we say, what am I going to get out of this? And, instead of what can I bring to this? And each of us has the ability to fall into that vortex of despair that makes us believe that we don't have it to give, instead of stepping into the voyage of delight that says we do. We might not know it at this point, might have been buried under a lot of fear, but we are capable. And this fork in the road leads us to either eternal Christmas or annihilation. And we can no longer say that we can't do it, because we've been given so many teachers that have said yes. And we hear all the time, this and greater things shall you do. And what's available to one son of God is available to all sons of God. You are so capable. And the Blessed Mother is one of my favorite teachers in regards to living in this solvent wonder. She literally delivers the impossible, impeccable, immaculate conception, holding this Christ child in awe and wonder. And this little one who she holds that has this great mission, this teacher that's arriving, and starts in this very vulnerable state, teaching love, teaching vulnerability and love, coming as a child, not as a king. And she cradles and nurtures this Christ consciousness that will change the trajectory of our lives. It's a Christ consciousness that will come into our awareness that will change the trajectory of our lives. And this baby will grow into this feisty boy who will school the scholars in the temples, and she'll watch and wonder and awe, as moms are known to do. And he'll grow into a friend and a brother and a teacher and a preacher. And he'll continue to flip tables and, turn on light switches. And she'll stand again in wonder and awe as he turns water into wine. And she'll witness just holding space for him to be who he needs to be, not in fear, but in wonder. Just holding that space of grace, accepting this concept in her heart before it even took root in her womb. And she demonstrates this grace that ushers in, this grace that's available to us, that ushers in, and it flows from her like breath, and it can flow from you like breath as well. Inhaling everything and everyone in acceptance, exhaling and extending love to everything and everyone in acceptance. And that's where we find that balance in that inhale and that exhale that Leonard is talking about, to have all, give all, to all. So she gives out without conditions. She gives her son, she gives her grace. She gives her compassion, her love, her mysteries, her miracles, and she's connected to God in the same way that she's connected to breath, and she's connected to breath in the same way that she's connected to God. Like, it's a seamless example for us. And God appoints her to this role as God appoints us to our roles. And the fulfillment of this role that you're appointed to will use all your sacred sauce and also all of your sacred scar tissue as well. In fact, it will use every single aspect of yourself, right down to the bone marrow, every single hair. There's not one that belies your ability to play out your part, not one hair on your head. All we have to do is listen to that same voice that spoke to her, that is ever speaking to you, suggesting to you, supporting you, and stepping into your most audacious state, which is to be an extension, a channel. And it invites you to your own ordination. And not only that, it doesn't just invite you, but it gives you all of the resources, the strength and understanding that will entail the success of this, hero's journey, if you will. And it will bless you, and it will bless everyone. And this is the voice that comes to the Blessed Mother of the, Mary of Nazareth, this teenage girl. And the angel says, joy be to you, favored one. The Lord is with you. Now, we're all favored ones. I know I've shared with you before that my sister Mary has a t-shirt that says, God loves you, but I'm his favorite, which is a joke. We're all favored by God. We're all God's favorites. And our role is to see that we are favored and to trust the direction. So Mary, full of grace, she's willing to see beyond her own agenda, empties herself, completely empties herself. And we empty ourselves by eradicating want and worry and courting wonder. These children at Christmas Eve, they're magnificent teachers. They're not worrying or wanting about what's on their list. They're like these volcanoes of wonder, more confident than drunk politicians. They're like, this is happening. This is definitely happening. And you've performed that way as well. They know what we have tend to forgotten is that our good is at hand. And Mary didn't dabble in earthly ways and worries. She said, I trust, let it be done unto me. Let it wash over me, because I have no knowledge of what is mine to do. So just let it come to me and through me. And in her, kid at Christmas Eve enthusiasm, she's fired up. She runs off to Elizabeth and she tells her cousin, Elizabeth, who's supposedly barren. And Elizabeth is somewhere in her 70s or 80s, and she's never given birth, and she's always wanted a baby. And so the angel comes to Zechariah, her husband, and says, your wife is going to give birth. And both of these women are such great demonstrations for us in regards to being fearless extensions, because by the worldly standards, this should have never happened. Neither one of them were conceived worthy, right? One was a virgin, the other one was quote unquote barren. But like Mary, we are at the same space of that audacious fertility, because we are like her, exactly like her, absolutely pure in spirit, untouched and untainted by the world. And we are like Elizabeth, absolutely like her, insanely fertile for good, despite the illusions or expiration dates placed on us by a fearful and fickle world. These women didn't allow the worries to block God's wonder. And even though they were not qualified to fulfill this intention or this invitation, God doesn't call the qualified. She qualifies the called. They say that everyone's called, but few answer. And it doesn't matter if you answer. What really matters is, do you answer? Are you saying yes? Have you taken a vow of devotion to this calling, to this listening? Have you rushed out and shared the news with your cousin? Have you allowed your enthusiasm to spill over to the point that your convictions stir up concepts in the hearts of the world? Have you given yourself over, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor? In all stages of your life, do you answer your call and allow yourself to be an extension? Mothers know about this thing called devotion. We cannot help but hold space for loving our concepts. Mothers hold this precious child like Mary in her devoted gaze as he enters the world. And then 33 years later, she will hold him as he surrenders that life. And still in awe, through all of it, she extends this wonder, this awe, this devotion, ever embodying this fearless extension of God's love, despite what the form will look like. embodying the invitation of the angel Gabriel. Don't be afraid. Empty yourself of all attachments, of all wants, and instead live in wonder. After all, we are here to demonstrate that, to allow, to align, to accept that this is the world, and beautiful and terrible things will happen. But if we move fearlessly, we can bring to the world a greater love than ever before recognized. And that's the word. Welcome, Clive. Thanks for joining us for this conversation. I've, witnessed you really be an embodiment of unconditional devotion towards your practice. And so I'm really excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Maureen. That was a real feast. Things to think about there, as ever. Just say good morning. As you can see here where I am, it is almost nighttime. It's very dark here.
Eric joined us too. What a great group. And you've done some of the things I want to start with, which is definitely introducing ourselves.
Justine, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
Yeah. Is this a night for light here? Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I was kindly invited here today to speak to you on being an extension of love. And at first, I drew a blank. I thought, I'm a sort of man of words, but really of writing words or singing them. I don't have a lot of time when I'm speaking at length. But then I realized the answer was in front of me, or even the question, or maybe just the truth and the knowing is that blankness was where I needed to be. That was what I needed to talk about, that emptiness, that space, that stillness. For when I do in moments quiet my mind and call a time out on thinking, and just try and be aware for a moment and be the me who has all the words, all the thoughts, all the actions and feelings, just waiting there to be used as me, the creator, the arranger, the expresser. And before the feeling of emptiness and openness and possibility is grabbed by the agitation and discomfort and the unfamiliarity of that space, and I reach for my phone or computer or my mental list of things to do, in that place, if I just stop and breathe, allowing myself, my senses, my body just to be, to work, to automatically become what they are in each moment, then if I stop pedaling and free wheel for a moment and enjoy that feeling of kind of watching in a way, then I experience being what I am. I experience being who I am and how I am. But what is that stillness? What is that me I find there? For me, that is what I call love. That feeling where I am just aware, but I'm there as a receiver of love. But in that receiving, I'm also giving. I am giving back. I am being that mirror. I am being that reflection of love in its totality. For like the sun, that when it shines on the moon, We see the moon, then the moon shines back. It gives back. It is at the same time the receiver and the source. We may ask ourselves, how can we be an extension of love? Well, I think we are love. And for me, it's more the issue of not how can I be it, but what am I doing to deny that? What am I doing to cover that up? What am I doing in my life to stop me undeniably being all that I've been given to be? What is it that I'm searching for? Am I climbing up the mountain towards? What am I making a journey towards? Ever searching for something, some more peace, more ease? What am I doing to obscure the light within me? For me, that is more the question. For in those moments of awareness and of quiet, of being, of stopping and seeing myself as love, and all around me as love, I see that I always start that journey at its destination. I'm already there. I've already reached my end. And that I'll always arrive at the beginning to start again. And that journey is life. It is love. It is a beginning and an end and a middle all at the same time. So maybe what is the point? Why set out at all if we're already there? For me, it's to be and to know the circle that is love. I saw a program the other day and they were trying to describe infinity. We watched it, myself and Mia, for about an hour. I think Mia fell asleep. And I got to about an hour and I thought, yeah, I can see what they're saying here. But then one person said, it's an infinite circle. That's infinity. It has no end and it has no beginning. And I thought, yeah, I know that. That's love. To know that circle, that infinite emptiness, that fullness of love, I think is what it's about. To be alive, to laugh at the joke, to see the resolution, to cry at the film as I recognize myself in the emotions, to turn the page of the book in the heart-stopping moment of anticipation, to feel the desire and the heartbreak of a relationship and the sense of having felt something worth having, even if it was lost again. To know that circle of love is endless and complete. In essence, to be the one thing we have been given to ceaselessly do, to breathe. To breathe in, to breathe out, to breathe and rise, to fall, to rise again, to know life and death. It is a simple thing to do, but it is complete. As a singer in a band, I asked myself the other day, why did I drive in the dark through the fog to somewhere and dress up and stand on stage with my friends in the band to play songs that will maybe be over in 3 or 4 minutes, knowing that in maybe 3 hours I'll be back in the darkness again in the car, alone with my thoughts in the fog. Why did I do it? I did it to experience the giving and the receiving, the ebb and the flow, the loud and the quiet, the start and the finish, the doing and the done. My band is called Clive Williams and the Light. And I realized the other day, I was given that name. I didn't really conjure it up. It just came to me. And I realized kind of one of its several meanings. And that was that is me, Clive Williams, as the thinking, doing person. And that is me, the other part of me, the light, the love that is within me and shines through. And if I can marry those two into one thing and become one thing, then I am an extension of love. I am love itself. Thank you.
You know what I love about the infinite circle is that what I love about that is that I was reminded of that Charlotte's Web, and that in the end, she dies and she gives birth to all of these babies, but they don't live to see her. It's a story, but Wilbur sees them, and Wilbur takes care of them and protects them, and her legacy is guaranteed because of him. And just like there's that circle, if she hadn't done what she had done out of just love, her children wouldn't have benefited in the way that they did. And it just like that beautiful circle continues on and on. I just love that. So anyway.
I do too. And I loved how you said, like, why are you driving in the fog to play, a few songs and then get back in the car? And it's like to just be in that flow of love, the giving, the receiving when giving, like it. And we're all here to do that in our own way. Yours is through music, and your beautiful share today. Thank you, Clive.
It was interesting for me because Clive and I didn't talk about what we're going to talk about. We just sort of, like, he spoke about breath and I spoke about breath. And I didn't know that Liliana was going to tell that story about Wilbur, and Regina didn't know that we were even talking on this before she was guided to do the prayer of the miracle worker. Like, the more we move into the practice of Tapestry, the more we move into the practice of being fearless extensions and just letting whatever needs to come, the more we will see those seamless synchronicities that are just delightful.
Absolutely. And all of that came from tapping in, listening to that guidance, which is coming from love, being that extension of love.
Yeah. And it's one voice that's like whispering over here, you do this, whispering over here. But that doesn't make any sense. Don't worry about it. Oh, aren't I supposed to do all of this and say all that? No, you're not.
Well, and you talked, Maureen, about class, conscious love and sacred service. And I was thinking, Clive, as you were talking about going and playing, like, that's your sacred service. It's also conscious love. And it's not really like whether the conditions are optimal. There's no fog and it's nice and clear out and everything. It's just what's in my heart to extend here. And we are blessed when we do that.
The extension of love, it doesn't negate what is. And Joan wrote in the chat, like, what gives me life is that I showed up at a church where my son, who's on the spectrum, could drop the F-bomb and nobody would blink. You know what I mean? It's like the fear that someone's going to judge you is connected to the addiction to judgment, a fear of judging yourself. And that's the only thing that's happening. So when Clive was talking about, like, I'm the block, that's why it doesn't matter how you show up. All are called, few answer, and I'm not responsible for you answering or not answering. I'm answering.
And today, in the
Okay,
chat,
Mary.
Nancy put that Shoshana is shining her light, literally and figuratively.
Mhm.
I just say, I think you were talking about being fearless, and I think that for me that was something when I know I in the band when I come up with it, you know, another song about love, they kind of go, another one. I said, well, can you think of something better to write about? You know, nobody's come up with anything yet. And I found when I used to play in bands, and this was never something we would sort of sing about, it was always about something else. And I had some events in my life where I was fairly close to death, and it showed me that the value of life and the value of being fearless in that moment, because I didn't know how many more I was going to get if I kept doing these daft things and ending up in hospital or wherever. So I just decided to go out and be fearless and say, well, you know, I'm here to be me, so go on, go out and be you. And that being me comprised of being that extension of love, you know. So I go up in front of people and I sing about what I want to sing about. To me, there is only and is that one message, you know, of you know, self-inquiry. Look at yourself, be yourself, and know everything, everyone. And I think that's, you know, the fearlessness that is there in life to be taken, you know, and it's a joy, you know, because when you feel yourself, when I'm up there being so supposedly fearless on stage, I'm flying, I'm in joy, you know, I am in that place. And yeah, and that's the moment at that time, and then the song ends, and then I'm back in the car and I'm doing that. But I know it is worth the effort to go and be that, to carry that sort of my truth.
And, you know, that's that moment where, Maureen, you put it from wanting versus wonder. Like, instead of thinking something's missing, like wondering, like what's possible. Like,
Yeah, you know, the river never checks herself out in the mirror. She's like, I'm awesome all the time. You know what I mean? Like, she never like stops to question if she's enough.
she just flows.
Yeah, she just flows with what she knows and what is. And like I said, with all of your special sauce and scar tissue. And here's the thing, the reason she doesn't do that is because if she did, she would dam herself and dry up and turn from a river into a puddle. And a puddle, so you will see this, I want to say outside, because of course you're not like this, but every once in a while, we might find ourselves checking ourselves out in the mirror. And by that, I mean saying, what's in it for me? How do I look in this? What am I going to get out of this? And immediately fear will show up, stagnation will show up, awkwardness will show up. Not that awkwardness won't show up when you're also extending yourself, but it will be a different type of awkwardness, almost an annihilating awkwardness that you're like, I don't even know what to say here because I'm afraid of what people will think of me. So it's like all of that is worry and wonder. Kids show up, crusty and picking their noses like, I'm good, let's get this done. You know what I mean? Like, kids have that mentality of like, it's so much more beautiful than what you even see. So let me stay in the wonder of what I can't see. Because what I can see is a virgin or a barren woman. And that's the perception of a puddle that's not going to generate something. And so that sacred service part of it is so important to me. To annihilate, what am I going to get out of this? To annihilate what's in it for me. Because just like Charlotte, she didn't know that she was literally investing in the well-being of her children. Of course, we can know that now, though. I know I'm on, sermon number 10, but
I love it. I think that this is such a pivotal and transformative point that you're making. And there's so many ways in which we do stop ourselves. And, between the message that you're sharing and then Clive, your example of like, yes, another song of love. Like, I'm just going to keep flowing this love. I'm not going to stop. Like, it's just going to keep flowing and I'm not going to examine it. And I don't need to look at it. It's just flowing and flowing and flowing.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I love that unquestionable and unapologetic state that he takes around his music, because it's really the only thing you can do in devotion and dedication of listening to the voice. It's the only thing you can do. But I do find it interesting that sometimes people who have not allowed themselves to fully express will stand at the cusp of someone who is fully expressed and say, how do you do that? As if it's some mystery. It's not a mystery. It's equally available all places, all the time. And when you are in it, which you have been in it, you cease to need to explain it or define it or defend it. It just is just a boring conversation. And to try and ask, how do you do it, is also a defense on, I'm still not doing it. I'm still talking about doing it.
This is a very bold and beautiful topic.
I say something. I remember you just going off what you were saying there. I can remember playing at a show once, and somebody came up to me, a friend of mine, and he said, "Thank you so much for doing that, because you are doing what I would love to do. You are being who I want to be. You do it for all of us. You're on the stage doing it for everyone in the audience."
Yes.
And I'd say, yeah, but you can be that too. Just it's not I haven't got the patent on it. Just come up, and I've always encouraged people to, have your voice, be your voice.
It's like that Marianne Williamson quote that says, like, you will unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And there's always a place within me that's like, I'm not doing it so that I can get you to do it. That is, the river doesn't roll, so that the birds will sing. She's just like, you're going to do your thing and I'm going to do my thing. And because I can't not do it. So anyway, I do love that, Clive. Thank you for demonstrating that.
Yeah. And I once heard someone say, having expectations is like premeditated resentment.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's always the case, but I do know that when we're attached to our expectation and it's not met, then yes, it makes us feel bad. But we can always have sort of a vision of what we would love, and wonder about it, which then it doesn't feel quite as attached, expansive. Do you want to say anything more about that, Maureen?
Yeah. Sometimes expectations are, intentions versus joyful expectations, but your expectations can only be based on you, not the world. Like, I expect myself to succeed and be in joy here because that's what my expectations are. But I can't expect that you show up that way because we live in a chaotic world and I get to allow you to be how you want to be.
Just saying that when you find yourself in a position, where you think that you're not living up to an expectation or something, it is just a little signpost really to say, to look at yourself again and say, look, I spotted myself doing this, and to see that there is an opposite, to know when that when you're doing what you don't want to do or not being how you want to be, that is also, well, what do you want? It is the thing. So stopping yourself and recognizing yourself and just say, okay, yeah, I know I can get back, look again and stop and breathe, so it's a useful tool. That interaction, as the Leonard Cohen thing was, it's always both. It's there to keep the pendulum swinging, keep the motion, keep the movement of life.
Yeah.
Thank you. Colm, you came up here with something wonderful, I'm sure. Please share.
I don't know about that. No, just, a fascinating conversation again, as always in Speakeasy. But I was just thinking a couple of things. This has been an interesting week for me. I got a phone call on Wednesday morning. I was in some Zoom meetings, got a phone call from a guy that I only met about 10 days earlier to say that a speaker that they had booked for a lunchtime gig on that day had let them down. And would I turn up and speak to a group of entrepreneurs about sales and give an hour lecture on sales at lunchtime at about 90 minutes notice. And I decided to say yes, because but I have a point. So I decided to say yes. You know, there's Clive Williams and Seamus Scanlon, both excellent musicians. I can play the guitar, not nearly as well as either of those, and I certainly cannot write any songs. But I know what I can do, and I can turn up and I can speak. I don't, you know, I've figured that out with me. That's a gift that I have. And all I'm really trying to say to people is let's step into our own gifts. I'll never be Clive Williams, but I'll never be Seamus Scanlon. They'll also never be Colin O'Brien. C'est la vie, right? So we need to step up and be who we can be. Maureen Muldoon can never be Bella, and vice versa, right? Yeah. I'm not a fan of karaoke, because karaoke to me is in fact somebody trying to be somebody else, wishing they were Mariah Carey or somebody else, and they will never be that. They need to find their own song. And I put out a blog post every Sunday morning here in Ireland. Well, it's on the web of YouTube channel. And this morning it was, and some of you will remember this. I'm looking around the room at the vintage. Do you remember Yoda in Star Wars, right? So Yoda has this phrase where he's teaching Luke Skywalker. He says their starship has crashed into a swamp. And he's saying, Luke, would you ever get the starship out of the swamp using the Force? And Luke's saying, I'm trying. And he said, Luke, do or do not, there is no try. Do or do not, there is no try. And all I'm saying in that is we've just got to be ourselves, just be the very best that we can be. And let that be enough, really, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh my God. Amen. Yeah. You know, last night we were watching Charlie Brown's Christmas. And I don't know if it's famous in Ireland or England, but it's a big hit here. And Charlie Brown is like this depressed child who speaks with a very large vernacular of an adult. So when Charles Shaw was writing this, he thought it was a flop. He was like, who the hell's going to watch a Christmas show about these precocious little rugrats who are like depressed and like so adult-like? And he didn't allow himself to get in his own way. And this is when it became one of the most popular Christmas series, is this Charlie Brown thing where he's like, oh, you know, nobody likes me. And it's like a character named Pigpen who's like covered with dirt. And it's just like, who else would have thought to write that except for Charles Schulz? You know, who else would have thought that? And to include in Christmas the fact that sometimes people are really freaking depressed around here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so beautiful. We don't want cookie cutters. We want the truth of who you are. So I know I'm just singing to the choir here, Colin, but I really appreciate your saying that.
Oh, thank you. But I suppose I'm really just saying, I think everybody who turned up today turned up as themselves. And, you know, so, and that's all we can do. So, thank you, Clive. Thank you for your lovely talk, along with Maureen. Thank you indeed. And Seamus, your lovely music. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Joan.
Hi. I guess I have more of a question kind of to ask the smart people talking today about flow and being in flow. And I'm at a time in my life where I can start doing things. And then I feel like I get stuck like several times a week. Like, okay, do I want to focus on this? Do I want to focus on that? What do I want to do with this next phase of my life, kind of thing? So how do people kind of bring themselves back instead of being stuck and damming yourself up like the river? If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
And what I would even say, Joan, is that like this illusion of being stuck is like the illusion of Elizabeth being barren. You know what I mean? She was just sort of, that was a part of the process of her seeds being in the dark, but ever active. And it's the same thing as like, you know, Charles Schulz. It's like what we call stuck is maybe just a pause. You know what I mean? Like we make it wrong, but it's part of the creative process. You know, the creative process, nature has winter. It's dead. It looks dead. Winter could be like, I am stuck. I am never going to birth anything. And then spring comes. Do you know what I mean? So I think like taking the edge off of, taking the judgment of this idea of stuck, and also that creativity doesn't work linearly. It swells and swirls and stops and spits and spurts and sings and, you know, silences. It does all of those things. And you can, and for me, I would say, like, just let it be what this creation, what this life that is finally freed from the constricts of what you were dealing with. And Joan has 2 kids that she's raising, now has a big, fat, beautiful, empty palette. Like, let it doodle a little while.
Mhm.
Don't get into making it provable. Just let yourself watch what it wants to be. I know it feels like I've been watching for a while, but just like continue to soften it with yourself. And that's what I'd say about that, Joan.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's less
Yeah.
violent.
I think putting something in on the stove, as it were, and then allowing it to cook, you know, continuously stirring it or hoping it's ready now or whatever is not cooking. That really, you know, and I think that's something to really learn. I mean, it's something I've had to learn in being a creative person, is when you start and when you stop and when you wait. That's I mean, Stravinsky said not very famously, but he said on a program once, he said, I see myself as like an insect sitting there. I wait, and when the time comes, I jump.
Mhm.
That's how he creates. That was his thing. He said, when the muse comes, I jump. Before then, I just wait.
Yes.
I love that, instead of forcing it, because
Yeah.
that doesn't work.
Right. Or judging, you know, when the water's frozen, it's frozen. Go skating, do something different. It will thaw and it will flow. And when it will flow, you'll feel super busy and over, you know, excited. And then it will go, don't worry, it'll be winter again soon and it will freeze again. I love that idea, Clive. So anyway.
I love it.
Thank you,
too.
everyone.
And I want to say in the chat here, we have someone new here in the community, Astra, who said, thank you. I'm new here and feel quite shy, but this is so exactly what I needed to hear. I was in the flow writing and just being me, the river, in my joy, unique. And she goes on from there. You can read what she said in the chat, but just how perfect this is to be in the flow. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Clive, so much. We're going to hear from Seamus again, another amazing song. Thank you, Seamus.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote down my thoughts because I didn't want to give a long spiel before this song. So I satisfied that part of my brain, but I will say that this song is one I wrote very directly about everything people were
Well,
saying.
if you want to share your thoughts before you sing, we're always open.
Cool. I'll do that then. Thank you. I don't know, just with that thing of being on the cusp of doing something that you want to do or aspire to do, or being a certain way that you'd like to be. Particularly when Clive mentioned like the drive after or before the gig, which for musicians is often the moment of like surrender to just being and doing what you've always wanted to do and be. Those in between parts are actually really hard for me, and I think a lot of people. And one of my constant works in progress is being a comforting reinforcement to myself when that's very difficult. And every time I hear someone share something that is in that vein and resonates, I feel really grateful, and I feel encouraged to share that myself. And it is also immediately a stepping stone towards being in the place of being brave enough or still enough or whatever the blank is, to surrender and like be and do what the things you want to be. So this song's called Wait, and it's a bit of a letter to like myself and those selves that need the enforcement and the encouragement. So yeah. are a soul full of patience. You've never known the type, feeling sheepish all the time now, dreading knocking on the door. But if they ever come calling, know you owe them nothing more. Oh, let your breath rise and fall. Can we hold hands through it all, so it feels just a bit easier than it's been? And I won't let you forget. Now I'll wait for you. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Seamus. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Come back next week. We'll be back here again, same time, same place, to continue the conversation. Have a great day. God bless.
Thank you, Bella. Thank you, Seamus. Thank you, Clive. God bless.